All right, we're back for the final lap of the Rice Exchange this Monday, June the 30th. Investments in agriculture and research is one of the key focus for the African Export-Import Bank. The trade finance institution has therefore recognized individuals and organizations that are moving the needle in the area of agri-technology. Professor Umezuruike Opara was one of those Africans whose work in biotech engineering for agriculture has been recognized and supported with funding and other resources. Here's my interview with him last week in Abuja at the 2025 Afreximbank meetings. So we're taking the conversation further here at the African Export-Import Bank into the field of biotech research, life sciences, healthcare for 1.2 billion people on the African continent. And standing here with me, Professor Linus Opara, one of those who've been recognized by Afreximbank for some of his works in the area of healthcare. Thank you. It's good to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
Let's get to this conversation around biotech research. Why is this important, and why is the Afreximbank supporting what folks like yourself are doing in that field?
Well, thank you very much. We are in a unique situation on the African continent. We are endowed with enormous natural resources, well acknowledged. But at the same time, we're also the continent that has the highest burden of major problems in the world, in the area of health, for example. That's what we call the neglected tropical diseases, as is endemic across Africa, including Nigeria. And there's also the problem of food insecurity, despite abundant land mass, natural resources. So biotechnology is one of those tools, we must consider it as a tool, that can help us to transform the whole food system, but also the healthcare, because there are opportunities for us to unlock these potentials into new value propositions.
As I said about good food, good nutrition, good health, an apple a day. I keep the doctors. I'm sure doctors won't like that, but again, that's what it is. So when you talk about biotech in Africa, tell me about some of the things you've done that makes Afreximbank recognize and support what you're doing, including UNESCO as well. I don't want to forget that.
Yes, thank you very much. So what we have done over the years is that we have conducted research. First of all, looking at the issue of food security. One of the challenges we have is that a lot of what we produce on the African continent with high food insecurity does not actually reach the end user, does not reach the consumers. Many people will be surprised to know that up to 40% of what we produce does not get to the consumers. They are lost along the value chain. Some are lost on the farm due to diseases, pests, due to rough handling, due to lack of cold chain, due to lack of dry chains, and due to lack of processing. So in many cases, in these particular crops, we actually sold them in the raw state. And value is often added outside the African continent. And that is not good. We're exporting jobs, we're exporting our natural resources. So what research can do, particularly biotechnology, is to enable us to transform these natural resources into high-value products and services, which you can now sell across Africa.
So where did Afreximbank come into this with what you've done?
So what Afreximbank has done so far is to recognize the work we have done in the last 15 years based at Stellenbosch University in South Africa, where I was a South African researcher in post-harvest technology. Now what we have done is to conduct research from the farm, during handling, during storage, during packaging, during value addition processing, all the way to export. And we developed a model which can guide your research using the value chain approach, so that instead of making that research only on the farm, growing the crop, that is not sufficient. Value lies more after harvest. And many people don't think about it. If you go to the shop and buy a loaf of bread, ask yourself, how much of what you pay goes back to the farmer? Often less than 20%. The rest of it is on value added after the along the line. And that's where we are missing it on the African continent. If we can focus in that area, we can actually ensure that we are saving our harvest. So Africa must save its harvest. So what we also did at Stellenbosch University is that we use one crop as an example, as a model. And we focused on pomegranate for some reason. I've done a lot of work on pomegranate in the Middle East, in Oman, when I was there. When I arrived in South Africa, the farmers recognized and took an opportunity and said, you must do some work on post-harvest technology of pomegranates. And so we now initiated a major program over 15 years, grew human capacity, graduated over 70 masters and PhD students. So you need capacity building.
But for all you're doing, the capacity building, the research, bringing everything to the table,
where does the financing come in? Where do you find the finance? Where do you find the money? African bank, private sector, banks, whatever, local investors.
This is very, very important question. So the private sector played a critical role. And this is what the message we must spread across our African continent. Most of our farmers are smallholder farmers. They don't have the critical mass of finance. They don't have the critical mass for infrastructure development. And so you need the business to come in. And our work in South Africa on pomegranates under the South African Research Year was funded primarily by the private sector. Government, of course, is important. Government provided the first jab, initial funding, but that was important. And after that, we tripled that money.
Catalyzed the private sector.
That is it exactly. By working with the private sector, who invested in our research program, two critical things the farmers needed, the business people wanted. They wanted us to grow the human capacity that can work along the value chain, but they also wanted us to work on specific programs in the industry. I'll give you one simple example. How many farmers know the optimum time to harvest their crop so that it can make the long value chain? So need research in that area. How many farmers know the optimum storage temperature for their crop, if it is a cold chain, so that it can last for 6 or 7 months?
And this goes to why some of our products are rejected in Europe, because it doesn't meet international. They don't meet international.
The story of yams exported from Nigeria to not
and they put it in a very hot container. By the time it gets there,
because the cold chain was not maintained. But it's not only that. The problem also is that most of the yam is sold in bulk. Nobody talks about which type of yam. They have different behaviors. They are alive. They are respiring. They may need different temperatures during storage. They may need different humidity during storage. That is where research and biotechnology becomes very, very important. Through biotechnological research, we may now begin to focus on particular cultivars or varieties.
So you are enthused. I'm sure will be enthused with African building what you call testing centers for agro-product, like we have in Ogun State in Nigeria.
Yes, and I also understand that they're also putting one facility near Imo State Airport. And this is very, very commendable. We need to bring technology and knowledge closer to the
farmers, yes.
Closer to the rural areas, because that's where most of the production is happening. And this is also what we plan to do at the International Center for Biotechnology under the auspices of UNESCO, located inside the University of Nigeria in Soka.
I was just about to ask you what you did in Nigeria. You talk about South Africa, and I want to see what you did in Nigeria. Yes.
So what we have done now is to take what we have done in South Africa as a model, one crop at a time. So if you have developed a model for doing the research,
yes,
for converting knowledge into technology, we can replicate it. We can scale it up. And so what we have done now is we have started now with legumes. We have variety, different types of legumes across Africa, particularly in Nigeria. Many of them are not in the mainstream of our food system. We still import a lot of food materials. I give you one example. In the Soka area, there are different types of legumes. One of them is called Opara. Another one is called Akede. Where do you find them in your food? Perhaps they have the highest nutritional value more than what we already imported. So this is an area where we are focused on. So we have set up a new research program focusing on indigenous legumes. And these are crops that are often described as underutilized. And so it's very important that we apply the best technology, biotechnology, to enable us understand how these crops grow, the best climate to grow them, their resistance to diseases, and so on and so forth, so that we can now commercialize it.
Let's summarize this conversation around where you are finding finance for your research work. Where are you finding it?
Now, initially, just as in South Africa, and that is usually the case around the world, the government must come in first. To lay the foundation.
So do you have some governments?
We have government of Opara, government of federal government and Nigeria, because the center was set up as a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO. That means there was an agreement between the federal government of Nigeria and UNESCO. So that agreement is fine. And the government committed to provide the foundation, the funding.
Are you looking at funding also from African Bank?
That is now the next stage. So with the support the government has given us and with the opportunity we have to attend this kind of event where we have the private sector, research institutes come together, that's why we are here. And that is the type of interaction that we are having now. We are going to move to that next level, so bringing the private sector to really invest what is important for both our health and food security. Thank you.